behalf of our family, I also want to thank everybody for all the support and love and prayers during this very difficult time. And we're so blessed to have such a great family and great friends and a great church family. So I just want to thank everybody for that. I want to start this off because I know if my mom was up here, this is the very first thing she would say. She would want you all to know how much she loved you. She loved you all so very much, even if you've never met her. She loved you. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that every day, if not daily, at least weekly, my mom would want an update on everybody. Either she would give you a direct call or, send you a text message, or even if it was, her speaking with a family member and just, have you heard from so-and-so? She always wanted to know that everyone was okay and, what was going on in our lives. My mom's daily routine is she would always start with calling her kids and then her siblings. I want to speak directly to Miranda and Zach and Maddie. Almost every phone call that she had with Spencer, she always asked about you guys. She loved you so much, and she always, asked, what's new with you guys, and how's work going, and what your guys' friends are doing, and she brought it up all the time, and if she were here, she would want that known. I know that she also had a group chat with some of the cousins and the nieces, and every time you guys would message her on that chat, she always gave me an update. I was always, knowing about, the things going on with you guys too. And she often talked about, just like you said, getting together for more events other than this. She really wanted to reach out more and get together for family reunions. She talked about that all the time. Robin and Marlene, or you guys, I'm gonna call you guys out too. Mom did not let me not put this in here, so I also wanted to let you guys know that anytime she would call me at due, she always asked about you guys. She loved you so much. She always asked, how your kids doing, and what was new with you, and I miss them so much. I want to go on another float trip with Marlene and Robin. She said that all the time. And I could go on and on, about everybody. And that's just how my mom was. She genuinely cared and was interested about everyone. Even if she knew you or she had just met you. Over the last couple of weeks, as I've been going through her pictures and her belongings, my mom was very adamant about write things down. This is journal material, write things down, you don't want to forget it. And I came across kind of like a dream board, a journal entry that she had put together, and listed on there was her five core values, your most defining values. And I thought, I read them and I thought, that sums up my mom so perfectly. So I thought, kind of going through those would really truly speak to the person that my mom was. The first one that was listed was family. My whole life, for as long as I can remember, my mom always said families are forever, families stick together. And every holiday, birthdays, family get-togethers, it was very, very important to her. It was very important, everyone was there. And she never wanted to miss an event when it came to family. She, like I said, she talked often about wanting to get together more with more extended family and everybody. She knew that family was foundation. Together and loving families helped to positively impact our other values and all other aspects of our lives. She always loved her kids unconditionally and never missed an opportunity to tell us that she loved us or was proud of us every day, 2, 3, 4 times a day. It could get annoying sometimes, but she never missed the opportunity. Spencer, she always would start her day with your guys' morning phone calls. She always knew, Spencer goes to the bank at this time to drop off the deposit, and if for some reason he didn't answer, she'd call me. Your brother didn't call me. She'd be concerned, but I'll talk to him on his lunch break or after work. And of course, we get the nightly update, and what was going on with you. Your brother and I talked about the silver stocks. What's going on with silver. And, your brother went fishing today. He got this new jig and caught like the best fish, and he really likes this new fishing pole he got. Always asked, gave us your update about your work, your jobs, and Amy and the kids. And she knew how hard you worked. You were one of the hardest working people that I know, next to Mom, and I think you very much get that from her. My mom could hustle and bustle, back in the day. My mom was a very hard worker, and she always adored that about you, your hard work ethic, and that you're always, always hustling and always have a project. And, she always talked to us about everything that you were doing. She'd always say, your brother Spencer can turn a penny into a Porsche. She said that all the time. And she knew what a great dad and great husband that you were. And she loved you so much. And Amy, she absolutely adored you too. She commented often about your sweet demeanor, and she just thought you were so great for Spencer and her family. She loved that every holiday, every room of your house, down to the detail, was decorated with whatever holiday theme it was, especially Christmas. That was my mom's favorite holiday. Even the light switches have, a Christmas something on it. And then she was so overjoyed when you guys had Cammy. She was so happy for both of you. And she always said, I'm so glad, motherhood suits her so well, and I'm just so happy for them. And Jojo, I love you so much. And I'm so glad that you're my brother. We've been through a lot. Our whole lives we've always been together, and we will always be together. And Mom really needed your spirit, because I feel like the three of us, you were kind of that perfect blend, your calmness and your kindness and your fairness balance out the dynamic of me and Mom. So we needed to have, like she always said, JoJo's my peacemaker. So, we always needed your middle ground and your rationale. She always, even though I know she talked to you 2, 3, 4 times a day, you saw her every day too, but she would still, have you on her mind. You'd just leave and she'd be talking about you. Going to the store and, Maddie, go down the cracker aisle, we'll be checking out. Go down the cracker aisle, we'll see if they have the little sticks and cheese that Joe likes. Because they just are always out of them. Her, when she'd make bacon, egg, and cheese sandwiches and, bring them to us in bed. Our whole lives, my mom always said, it doesn't matter, I don't care how old you are, you're always gonna be my baby. She loved it, everything that she was able to bond with you over, really good movies. You always showed her the good movies, the great TV shows, video games. My mom got into video games. One time, she watched Joe, and Joe was like, Mom, why don't you give this a try? And she got good at it fast. She got so good she would play up her characters and sell them for money sometimes. She really did enjoy that for quite a while. She admired your brilliance. There'd be so many times we'd be in the car and she'd say, what was that, or who was that? I'm like, Mom, I don't know. She's like, your brother Joe would know. Joe would know who who that is or what that is. I remember there'd be nights we'd go out, my mom and I would go out sometimes on Tuesday nights to play trivia, and I don't recall a time that we did not come in last, but it was okay because we always had fun. But she'd always say, I knew we should have invited your brother Joe. Like, he would know all of these answers, and she'd be like, hide your phone on the table and text your brother Joe. I'm like, Mom, we're not gonna do that. Carly, my new sister, we all know how particular Mom could be. For lack of better words, who she would deem worthy of her kids. And she loved you so much for the happiness that you brought Joe. She really did see how you guys brought out the best in each other, and you guys helped each other to grow. And she really knew that you guys were a perfect fit, and she was so grateful for that. She knew that if anyone in the whole world that was gonna, take care of her baby or JoJo, she would be so happy that it's you. And then when we got the pregnancy news, Mom was just so happy. When Mom would say, love, 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 cry, cry, cry. She passed on Sunday, and as I'm sure you guys remember, you had made those really nice baby announcements and brought them over, and that for the next 2 days of her life, that announcement, that those pictures did not leave her hand. She was up in the bathroom one time. She was in there for quite a while, and I was like, hey Mom, what are you doing? She's like, oh, I'm just looking at pics of my grandbaby, pictures of my grandbaby floating around. And I know that, especially right now, it's hard not to think and be sad and wish that Mom could have been here to meet him and play with him and just get to know Mom like how we all have been. But we know our Mom, and she will be there for every bit of it. Absolutely, in spirit, she will be there for every bit of it. Like she always told us. She's up there, knocking on the executive's door. I need to talk to your boss's boss. Your grandson's got gas. What are you gonna do about it? So, Mom's, up there doing everything on her end, and everything that she can, and then some. And I know that he is gonna be just so loved and have the best, most fulfilling life because he's the best parents. And I know that my Mom loved me. Mom and I, we always had a special bond, a close bond. I will admit that out of the three of us, I was probably definitely the most difficult to deal with at times. But, even then, she never treated me any different, never loved me less. Never missed a moment, to say I love you or I'm proud of you, or just, check in on me. She called me 3 times at work. She knew I was at work, and she just wanted to make sure I was still at work. Or, you just say something, positive and encouraging. And, she would tell me, I think we bicker a lot because we're so much alike, and we are. And I'm so thankful for the amount of time that we got with Mom. That in itself is a blessing. I was with her every day and love her as a mom. But she was also my best friend. We did so much together. She liked all the things that I liked. We took numerous camping trips, and she loved, going kayaking, things like that. One time we were headed down to Eureka Springs. We always went for my birthday, so it would have been this time of year. We would be, planning and packing to go down to Eureka Springs together. And we were driving south on 13, and we were getting ready to come up to the town of Osceola. You know, we had the car all packed out with the camping stuff. We were doing it true camping style. I had my guitar in the car with me at the time. And Mom said, let's play a game. And she's like, what if we stopped at Osceola Cheese and we pretended like we were from Australia, traveling the United States together. And you could get out your guitar and, you know, play your couple of songs, and it'd just be fun to see if we could get any money, you know, like get any money in your guitar case. I'm like, I like where your head's at, you know? I'm like, Mom, can you even do an Australian accent? She's like, yeah, sure I can. I'm like, all right, let's hear it. It went into like a, hello, me and me daughter, traveling around the United States. Like, it went from like cockney British into like Italian. I'm like, this is never gonna work. I'm like, you're gonna blow our cover. So, you know, we didn't do that, but we did stop and still buy like $60 worth of cheese, so it was a win. You know, we would go out and play pool together all, you know, often, and my mom was very competitive. You know, she always would say, I'm not gonna let you win just because you're my daughter. And if you lose and cry about it, you know, get over it and let it be a lesson to you. You know, we did park trips with Layla every day, you know, with car rides every day, and I just had, you know, hours, you know, driving around with Mom with moments to talk about anything, about everything. You know, I told my mom everything, because, you know, my mom was that kind of person that, you know, she was never gonna jump your case, she was never gonna judge you. My mom, you know, with all of her kids, we've always had that relationship with her. We always knew we could tell Mom anything. And we have never had, or will we ever have, anyone who knew us like our mom did. And she loved being our mom, and she was great at it. But she also loved being a grandma. It was Gotti, though. That was the nickname given to her by her grandson, Kai. You know, she'd always tell me, you know, when she lived with you guys, she'd be, you know, downstairs, and you'd be at the top of the stairs with the little baby gate, and you would try to get her attention, so you'd throw your toys down there and say, Gotti, Gotti. So that's how she got her name, you know, Gotti. You know, she loves living with you guys and, you know, making up games. You know, making holidays and birthdays special. You know, a month before, you know, Christmas is, or your guys' birthday, she'd always remind us, you know, remind me, I gotta go, you know, get a card for everybody. She was always on top of it, and she always recognized both of your guys' talents, you know, Kai and Kels, and she loved your senses of humor too. I remember she'd just say, oh man, we love Kai and Kelsey so much, they crack me up sometimes. Obviously this wasn't in a part of my speech, but I had to let you guys know, Kai and Kelsey, that on the way down here, we stopped off at McDonald's. And I don't know if you guys remember, but back when my mom lived there, she would get the iced caramel mochas from McDonald's. And she was driving, Kai, you were in the back seat, you know, maybe 2 years old, and you're like, God, yeah, I want a sip. And she's like, okay, you can have a little sip. And she handed it back to you, and, you know, 30 seconds later, when she was at the next stoplight, she goes back to, you know, have you hand it back to her, and it was gone. I mean, it was a large one. Gone. And she goes, I can't believe he drank it that fast. Like, he's gonna be wired on sugar. His parents are gonna be so mad at me. But, so we stopped off at McDonald's, and the lady working at the counter is like, you just seem like you guys are, like, look tired. Like, you look nice, but, like, you just look tired. And, you know, like, we told her, it's been a week. It's been a week or two. And she said, I've got something for you, you know, this will be good. And she gave us for free an iced caramel mocha. And that was out about 20 minutes ago, and I'm like, okay, like, it's just little gaudy ways, you know, we have to remember those things in ways that she reminds us, saying that I'm okay, guys, like, I know it's hard, of course you're gonna cry and be sad, but we all know that that's not how Gotti was, that's not how my mom was, and it's not what she would want, but I had to share that because I know that she would want me to tell you that. So of all things, I'm like, wow, like how, you know, it's just her way of saying hi. And, you know, she also was a very beloved aunt. And to her nephews, Danny and Steven and Dawson, she absolutely adored all of you guys. You know, she was reminded so much of your dad through you guys. And she loved the conversations with you, you know. You guys could talk about World of Warcraft for days. You know, you always would, you know, teach her new things about the monarchies or the Kaiser. Or theme parks or, you know, trains. And she was so proud of all of you. She loved you guys so much. And she's like, you can hold the conversations with all of them. They're just such good conversationalists. You guys are so smart. And she really loved you. And the day that she passed, the last people that she talked to was you guys. You know, on your way up to the Smoky Mountains. And I know, and repeated, you know, she just kept saying, I just want you guys to really know, I really want you to know, I love you guys, I love you guys, I love you guys. You know, have fun on your vacation, I love you guys. And I'm glad that you guys got to have that. Because she really did adore you all. The love of our family got her through a lot of hard days. You know, she really did love her family, and that was another thing that my mom spoke of often, was love. You know, so many of, when we were reminiscing on our mom quotes, so many of them, you know, refer back to love, and love was actually the second thing that my mom had written down. My mom had a love for all things. She'd always say, I love everything, I just love everything. You know, she loved cooking. That was another thing that we did together all the time. She would always, you know, want to sign up to make meals for the missionaries. She really loved doing that. For the longest time, you know, it was just me and Mom in the house. And even when we would cut down a recipe by like 2/3, we always had enough food to feed 20 people, and it was just the two of us. And you know, we could feed an army with the way we cooked, and that's how she wanted it. You know, who doesn't love good food? She would always say. And I know later we're gonna have some of Mom's good food. Food can heal all things. I mean, she would even make food for our dogs. So she loved the dogs, and she loved cooking. And you know, we had dogs growing up our whole life. My mom also had a love and a passion for animals. She always said, you know, love all creatures, big and small. She actually had several times that she volunteered down at our local pet shelter up in Kansas City. And I remember, you know, growing up, you know, if we ever found a stray cat or a stray dog, a lot of kids know their parents would say, don't even think about it. But we knew we're gonna bring it home, and Mom's gonna be okay with it, and you know, we're gonna find their home. You know, we're always bringing home, me especially, because I also have this same kind of love for animals like my mom did, and like my grandma did too. But bringing home birds and squirrels and bunnies, and you know, we'd mend them and, you know, set them back into the wild. And my mom always had a very tender heart for animals. There was one time that I got home from work, and Mom rushes in from the garage, and she's got my blue cleaning gloves on, and they just seem shiny. And she goes, Max, I'm so glad you're home. We got a situation out here. Like, I need you right now. I'm like, oh my goodness, what is going on? So I go out to the garage, and my mom has the Q-tips and a little bowl and my olive oil, my $40 olive oil, in a little mixing bowl, and we had some little mouse sticky traps that were placed down, and you know, my mom said no way, so we were out there with gloves and Q-tips, rubbing the mouse down with oil, you know, getting them removed off the sticky pad, and you know, we got it free, and he stopped for a minute, kind of looked at us like, thank you, and he ran away just soaking wet, covered in oil. It took us like 30, 40 minutes, and I'm like, oh, you know, Mom, that was awesome. Like, I'm glad we did that. She's like, well, we got 2 more. You know, my mom also loved music in a wide variety. You know, it could have been anything from, you know, the classic 80s music, or, you know, country music. She liked Tibetan wind chime music, you know, Mormon Tabernacle Choir, you know, jazz. You know, she had a wide interest of love for music and movies too, and shows. Her favorite movie was Gone with the Wind. We watched that movie together all the time. My mom also loved nature. My mom always felt a very strong connection with nature. She would always take the dogs on walks and, loved camping and doing all that fun stuff outside. I remember one time we took our trip down to Arkansas. We were just kind of cruising through the mountains, and we happened upon this place, and the town was named 54 because when the town was established, they couldn't agree on a name, and there was only 54 people that lived there at the time, so they said, let's just call it 54. But there was this kind of back in the middle of nowhere place called Blanchard Springs that we stopped at. And my mom talked about it all the time. Maddie, that was one of my favorite places. We have to go back to Blanchard Springs. It always reminded her of like the Garden of Eden. It was really, really beautiful. She loved planting flowers. She, about 2 weeks before she passed, was trying to start our wildflower garden that we kind of do every summer together. And I'd be in the backyard, swimming with Layla, and she said, hey, while you're out there, if you have the hose, go water the flowers. I'm like, oh, sure, Mom, I will. I forget about it. I've watered those flowers every day, and they're growing really good. They just like really started growing up, and I told my friend, like, hold on, I gotta go check the side of the house real quick. And she's like, that's kind of weird, but okay. And she turned and go, oh, yes, they're growing. So, Mom, I've been watering the flowers every day. And, my mom was one of the kindest people that I knew. And kindness was the third defining value that my mom had written down. Everyone, my whole life. I just always loved my mom. They always said, your mom's like my second mom. Tell her anything, as I mentioned before, she never, got angry or was judgmental. She always understood people for who they were, not their mistakes. But how they could redeem themselves from what was truly in their heart. And she could relate to these struggles too. So my mom's not, she never sat up on her high horse and, looked down on anybody. And over the last, say 4 or 5 years, my mom has always been, passionate about helping others and being kind to others, but she often had talked about how she thought that she would be a really good therapist or counselor, or, some way to guide people through, a lot of struggles of life with, either addiction or trauma or mental health struggles. She always genuinely cared and was interested in people. I remember there was one time we stopped at the grocery store. She was just going in to get one thing. She was in there maybe 5 minutes, and she came back out and had a 40-minute story about the guy that she was talking to at checkout. And I just, she knew his name, his birthday, what his kids were doing, what his job was, what he was making for dinner that night, his pets' names. I'm like, it's mathematically impossible to get that much information in that short amount of time unless you just started rapid firing questions towards this guy. But that's just how my mom was. She knew every detail and remembered everything about everybody. She would give you the last $20 she had. She would take the shoes off her feet for you, and she opened her home to several people throughout the years. A lot of, talking to people over the last few weeks about my mom. Places we go to, the grocery store, the gas station, the parks. And people would say, how you doing? And I, would give them the news, and every single reaction, just, complete devastation. But they're just like, I'm in shock because, even though I had maybe just a couple minute interaction with your mom, a couple times a week maybe, like, she felt like family to me. And every person that I've talked to about her, has said the same thing. My mom also had one of the strongest testimonies of anyone I knew. My grandma and my mom both. And the fourth thing that she had written down was faith. And of all the things Mom ever taught us, ever told us, remember this is important. I believe that, faith was the most important one to Mom for us to remember. A lot of our mom stories, a lot of the mom quotes, and a lot of the things that we think about in order to make our decisions come from what Mom told us that, related to the Bible. I could pick from many, many stories and quotes that, my mom would tell us, but there's one in particular story that I wanted to share. My whole life, growing up, my mom told us all the time, say your prayers, there's power in prayer. So one day, I was about 7 or 8 years old, and I was in a mood. I was in a mood a lot. And she had just told me, I love you, baby, just say your prayers. And I snapped at her a little bit and, said, Mom, that's just like an irrelevant thing to say right now. That's just not helpful. And she immediately came into my room, sat by my bed, and said, I want to tell you a story. And she told me the story of the night that she got sick. My mom, had several things going on, but initially was diagnosed with a really rare blood cancer. And the night that she had gone into the hospital, she was in really bad shape. And the doctors and the nurses had never seen what they were seeing before. They were trying to get in there to, give her fluids and make sure she was okay, and they were scared to even go in there and touch her. They didn't know what was going on. And, all the nurses said that this woman is not gonna make it. She's gonna pass away. And, my family called up our church, and they came up there and they gave her a blessing. And the nurses walked in the next day, and one of them dropped to her knees and said, I can't believe it. Like, you're still here. And not only are you still here, you're sitting up and talking and telling jokes. Like, I'm not a person of faith, this nurse was telling her, but I've witnessed a miracle here today. And, it really took me back to just be like, okay, just take the time and think about things. My mom would always say, this life is like one drop of water in the ocean compared to an eternity. There's so much more for us beyond just this one life. And she always wanted us to have that strong moral foundation. She wanted us to have peace and comfort. And, we were little kids and scared. And she wanted us to know, beyond this, there's heaven, the joys of heaven and, all that we have waiting for us. And she wanted us to have joy. And the 5th thing that my mom had wrote down on her list of 5 was joy. And I know that Mom can see us now, and she would have so much joy and happiness of, how we have all come together and worked through this hard time. Because this is, the first time we've not had Mom here for a situation like this. And she would always say, find joy in the little things. That's another, Mom quote, find joy in the little things. It's so important. And all the time, every day, what was one thing that brought you joy today? I want to know one thing that brought you joy today. And my mom was very much, a positive person. She could, turn a bad situation to good. She was very much a glass half full mentality. There's been several times over these past few weeks that going through all of this, it's been just, there's just been a lot. And there's a couple of times I'm like, I just need Mom's opinion on this, and I picked up my phone to call her, stressed out with her funeral plans. I'm like, I just have to call Mom and ask her, and then I'm just like, you get kind of taken back, and it's just so habit for my mom to be there, talk to her every day. But she always told us our whole lives, she is never not going to be with us. You may not see me, but I am there. And there's been, quite a few different signs, just like the McDonald's coffee. There's been quite a few others too, but I just know that, that's Mom's way of not scaring us, moving stuff around or turning the lights on and off. She's like, I'll do it in a fun, happy way. And I'm like, okay, Mom, that sounds good. And, so I was sitting there, and I just wanted to talk to her out loud, and I just couldn't quite find the words that I wanted to say to her, because I had a lot. And just as my mom always said, write things down, I immediately had that place in my heart, and I heard her say, write it down. So I got the closest thing to me, which was my phone, and I just started writing. You know, I was up all night long just writing in my phone of what I wanted to say. So I wrote her a poem that I want to read for everybody. A mother's love is like no other, I always heard you say. And all those years ago, you told me the important roles moms play. I remember all-day car rides when I went to work with you. For breakfast, you let me eat black olives, and you made up car games, too. At night, when we'd lay down, I'd snuggle into my curly spot, and you'd sing to me, little angel, Mom, I never have forgot. A mother's love is like none other, and every single day, you told me that you loved me, made each day special, in my goofy mom way. Then, a few years later, when life takes its hard turns, we didn't know what time we'd have, teaching still to learn. I remember when you told me you prayed, asking God for more time, just enough to make a few more memories in our mind. And in our house on Regency, you, me, and my brother, we never had much, but we were rich because we always had each other. You never waste a moment with us to dance, cook, laugh, and play, making up stories and make-believe voices. You did your best each day. Even though you were so sick, many days you felt your worst. You never once gave up on us. You always put us first. And through tough times, your love endured. Your faith not once was shaken. You taught us every day about God's plan of salvation. Families are forever, and love conquers all things. More words you told me all the time, now grateful for comfort that it brings. And in my teen years, we would fight, as all mother-daughters do. I would tell you, Mom, just go away, like that ever would stop you. You say, Mom, you just don't understand, you've told me this before. Well, that's too bad, and guess what? I'll tell you 20 more. Sometimes we disagree, and sometimes I make you mad. But someday when you're a mama, you'll finally understand. And then in my adulthood, after all my stubborn years, you were still the first one I would want to talk to, through the joy, fear, love, and tears. You never jumped to anger, and never were one to judge. You approach with understanding, forgiveness, and with love. Camping, floating, karaoke, you always said I'm in. Because you are my mom, you are also my best friend. We had the best adventures. You found joy in everything. And it hits me every moment now. All our lives won't be the same. I sat down on the couch. I haven't slept in days. Consumed with sadness, shock, and guilt, my mind is in a haze. My first thought was to call you Mom. You always understand. I picked up my phone to call you, then realized that I can't. I know you say I'm tough because I'm a fighter just like you. I'm overwhelmed, sick, and tired. Mom, what do I do? And I hear you say, remember what I've told you ever since day one. God would not give you a challenge you could not overcome. The crushing weight of my heartache, tears roll down my cheek. My daughter comes to hold my hand, and she begins to speak. Mama, don't be sad. I got a Band-Aid to make it better. I love you, Mama. You're so cute. You're the best mama ever. I laughed and kissed her forehead. Sadness instantly lifted. And I thank God for his blessing of the daughter I was gifted. And in that moment, I can't explain, it all happened so fast. A revelation of life's true purpose. It all makes sense at last. Choose the right, find joy in life. Families are forever. However we came into this world, when we leave, did we make it better? It's not what you gained, but what you gave. Did you help others to grow? Find the joy in little things. And I know what I must do so that my daughter will remember all that I learned from you. I know that I can teach her what's good and right and true, so that one day when I'm gone, she can pass on your teachings too. And in my true mom fashion, she'd say, I don't want tears. At peace at last with loved ones past, my Savior called me here. Because of you, Mom, your love, your words, you raised us to be strong, to tell your stories and continue your teachings. Your legacy lives on. A mother's love is like none other, and you showed me this is true. I only hope for my daughter I'll be half as good as Mom as you. I know you are always with us, and I know we'll meet again. I know you'll put in a good word for me.